Welcome everybody to Crypto Rosetta. My name is Savage. Today we're going to be having a look at BTC. Let's get into the charts and see what's going on. Okay, so before we get into the smaller degree counts, just want to go over some of the higher time frame stuff we're looking at here. Still haven't ruled out this idea that we could have this move still playing out as a bigger W, an X, and a Y to the downside. 1-to-1 would be this 26,510. So just looking out for that potential that this move here could start to form a three-wave structure to the downside, looking to come back down into some of these lower levels. Now, an interesting zone here would be this 28,419, because this would be a minimum requirement as a Y wave. Now, if we are looking at this, we'd be saying that we're looking for this in a three-wave move from this point here. Now, potentially we could also argue that we could be looking for a five-wave move to the downside from here, in which case this whole move could become A, B, and C. Now, our downside target for this would typically be this 25,067 to this 23,373. So this is looking at this in the more bearish way, saying that we're going to still see a move to the downside, where either we see a move down towards these 1-to-1 levels and possibly back into this channel in a corrective structure, or if we do start to see a bigger impulse to the downside, then potentially we could actually look to come back down into some of these lower levels over here. So just going to be on the lookout for this. If we do start to break down here in five-wave structure, could mean that we are starting to move down into some of these levels. Now, this 1-to-1 here at this 26,174 would still align with the idea of seeing a five-wave move to the downside in this way. Now, this would mean that we were going to get a running flat in this situation, though, if this is going to be the case and we get five waves to the downside. Now, the only way that we confirm this is by moving back up and taking these highs. So that's going to be important within this idea. If we do look to actually move down into those zones, breaking back above that high for confirmation is going to be something that is very important. Now, within the more bullish way of looking at this, what we were saying is that effectively we've already completed into here and we're looking for this as 1-2. Now, if we are looking at this in this way, effectively we have come down to this 236, which is a very rare target for a wave 2. So I'm just being on the lookout here for that idea of some five-wave structure to the upside, but it is looking the more likely that this is incomplete. Now, some key areas here that we're looking for is this 382, 50%. Lower down here is quite interesting towards this golden pocket, 27,139 to this 26,934. And then we also have this 0.6 lower down here. So looking at this idea of seeing this be a bigger corrective move to the downside here, looking for some of these lower targets, particularly this 382 to this 50% is looking quite interesting to me at the moment, given the current structure. But if we do start to form something like a five-wave move down here, possibly this lower target range here of this 618 to the 786 could become quite attractive as potential area for a bounce. So these are the things we're looking out for on the bigger time frame here. This is very choppy and messy up in the top end of this. Now, we were talking about a couple of things within this structure, still looking for the possibility that within this, we could be looking to complete higher up here, where this is an A, this is a B, and we're looking at this as a C wave. Now, the C wave would have come down already towards where we need this to actually come down to. If it does look to progress deeper, we still have these targets open here towards this 29,399 to this 28,695 as possible zones that we could see this move into. Now, this would align with coming back down a bit deeper here, looking for that idea of seeing a move into this 382, particularly if we had to move down towards this 1618 area, this 28,695. So going to be keeping an eye on this. Now, it is also possible that this move could be a three-wave move, and this is instead W, X, and Y. So we need to be on the lookout that this move could still look to do something along these lines, where we see another five-wave move play out to the downside here, making this A, B, and then C to the downside. So going to be keeping an eye on these lower levels here. Now, let's get into the internals of this. So what I'm looking for here effectively is the idea that we could still be looking for continuation to the downside. So we were looking at this in two ways. We were saying that what we could have here is the potential that this move over here is a W, this is an X, and then we're looking for a Y wave. Now, if we're looking at this as a Y wave to the downside, effectively what we'd be looking for is a B, and a C pattern. So given the current structure here, what we have is a five-wave move down. What I'm looking for is whether this move actually faces rejection here, and then we look to continue down. Our typical rejection area would actually be this 30,234 to this 29,991, which would be looking then for the possibility of a move to the downside towards this 29,251. Now, it is possible that we could be completed already, in which case our 1-to-1 would actually be here towards this 29,114. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on this level. If we do manage to hold support of this low here, we could see something like this develop, where we form a bigger corrective structure looking to push us up into this zone. Now, one key thing here is that if we move back above this high here, this 30,417, we would need to be cautious then, because what this would mean is that this whole move here would be a flat, and either we'd have to look at this as A, B, and C, in which case we're possibly going to come back up into this channel, or alternatively this could develop into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, it is not the neatest count to count this as a 5-wave structure here, but you can potentially argue that if you look at it in this way, we could have had extension in this wave 1 here, and then we would effectively have this as our 5-wave structure into this high. So just keeping an eye on that. If this is just 1 A, B, C, what we could still get is a 5-wave move to the upside in a third. So we're going to discuss that in a second. But until we actually break above this high here, you know, the likelihood is still seeming like we're going to see this continuation down. Now, we could see this develop as a 3-wave move, in which case 1-to-1 would bring us towards this 0.618, which would be this 29,300, which would suffice as a Y-wave target. But our 1-to-1 target's actually lower down here towards this 28,649. Now, if we do move down into this zone, particularly if we're looking at this as an A, B, and a C, what I would then be looking for is the possibility that this move to the downside here is actually going to be a 5-wave move, where this becomes 1, 2, 3, although confirmation only comes by crossing this 28,748 levels. So that would be based off of pushing up higher here. Once again, if we reject down from where we currently are, this would change us target to 28,614. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. If we do see price fail to break back above these highs, possibly we could be looking for this move to start to the downside. Now, another way that we could look at this is that we potentially complete into this low here, and then what we would be saying here is effectively all we have is 3 waves to the upside. Now, this way would be looking for this move to actually just complete as a 3-wave move. So if we just have this as A, B, and then we form another C wave to the downside here, 1-to-1 target being this 29,125 off of our current level here. Once again, same idea is possible here. We could see another move to the upside, in which case I'd be looking towards this 30K 101 as a possible rejection area towards the center channel here. If we see something like this, where this actually just becomes corrective up and we still see continuation down, but we fail to move down towards that 1618 level, effectively what we could be forming here is a bigger flat correction. So just being mindful that if we do find support in this 29,173 to this 29,512 area, we need to be on the lookout for that possibility of getting a 5-wave move to the upside, where this becomes A, B, C, and then we actually see a push back up into our typical B wave target. Now, some interesting areas here, if this is going to be a flat, would be between this 382 and this 50%, which would be here at this 30,636 to this 30,367. So that would align with coming back into these highs. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. If we do see price look to push back to the upside here in 5 waves, then possibly we could look to retest this area. Other areas of interest would be towards this golden pocket, 30,982 to this 30,908 level. So going to be on the lookout for this. If we just see 3 waves down where this becomes ABC, potentially we could still see something along these lines where we get a push up here, where we actually see the C wave look to play out at a later point here after getting a push to the upside and taking some of the liquidity that is in this zone. Now, another thing we need to just be cautious of here is the more bearish situation, which we could argue that this is 1 and 2 here, in which case we could be potentially completed our wave 2 already. It would be very shallow because it would have only come up here into this zone of this 0.382, which is technically possible. But what we'd be on the lookout for here is that this move from this point could be forming 5 waves to the downside, which, if we do actually look to cross this 27,059, would align with actually a bigger 5-wave structure. Now, the current structure is not suggesting a move that deep, but if we do start to extend out here, potentially we could look to target out this 2759 area, and then we could actually look for that 3rd wave confirmation. But what I'm looking for here is invalidation is at this 30,417. If we do see this break to the downside in this 5-wave move, possibly this could just be an A, well, this could just be A, B, and C, and then we complete this as a corrective move. 28,252 would be that current target. Alternatively, if we do see extension here, we need to just be careful that this doesn't continue on to the downside and look to actually push down in a bigger way, because there is a couple of ways of counting these moves at the top here. So we need to just be on the lookout. If we start to form 5-wave structure down, need to be on the lookout for this idea. This would align with that C wave coming back into the channel. So I'm going to be looking out for this as time goes on here. If we do start to see more 5-wave structure down, we could potentially see something like this look to play out. Now, just one more thing I want to talk about is we still have this potential here that within this structure we could have something like this. Now, this is a lower degree of confidence count here, where we were saying that, you know, we've come into this typical B wave area here. What we need to be careful of is that if we start to develop 5-wave structure to the upside, we could be actually looking out for this idea of pushing back up towards these highs here. 31,853 would be our 1.618 here. So if we do start to see 5-wave structure developing up here, I'm going to be keeping an eye on these higher levels here. 1236 to this 1618 could potentially align with the idea of having this as a flat correction here. 1-to-1 would be here at this 30,993 if we do get this as a running flat. So that's just one of the potentials that we are looking for. That could mean we just have a bit more of a tricky structure forming here. This is also one I'm just keeping an eye on in case we're going to look to actually extend out more here, is that if we do see this move actually play out just as a 3-wave structure down here, and we do look to find support in this zone of this 29,701 to this 28,934. If we do get 5 waves to the upside, we're going to have to see whether we get that retracement, find support, and then see that continuation. Failure to do so could mean that we're going to see an additional 5-wave move to the downside at a later date. So just keeping an eye on this. If we just form this as a corrective structure down here, get 5 waves to the upside, look to actually push up into this higher range, this 1618 to this 1236 area. What we could then see is a sweep of these highs, and then still seeing price actually come back down and possibly look to sweep these lows again. So this is going to be an interesting one. If we do see price just messing around up here, it could be that we are looking to actually form something along these lines. Now, looking at the possibility of upside here, the only way we could currently see it is you would have to say that within this structure here, you have either this is A, B, and you're going to C. 30,255 would be that current target at a 1-to-1, or alternatively you would have to say that this move here is a flat correction. Now this would only be confirmed by breaking back above these highs over here, which is sitting towards this level of this 30,416, and what you would be looking for effectively here would be a move up towards at least this 30,682 at a 1.618. Other targets for this could be as high as this 2.618, which can sometimes happen after we get a flat correction in a wave 2 position, which would be up here towards this 31,386. If we start to see 5-wave structure developing to the upside here, then potentially we could see some of these targets get hit, but invalidation of this comes by crossing this 29,512. Once again, this is a lower degree of confidence count. I'd only be looking at this properly if we move back above these highs, because the problem is at the moment, if we come down here, you know, there isn't a lot to get excited about within this structure here. I mean, potentially you could argue that you have something like you know, maybe a diagonal in here, but it's not very neat structure. It would have to be expanding, which is less likely anyway. But the only way you would know for sure is if we get a 3-wave move down here, we hold support, hold this low, and then we see price actually push to the upside in a 5-wave move like this. So that's what I'm just saying, you know, until we actually take this 29,512, just be careful of that possibility that there could be a bit of a squeeze to the upside here, though, you know, in reality, it's more likely, as long as we stay below this low, that we can just see that continuation to the downside. Having a look at the daily CPR lines, what we can see is that we have actually got our previous central lines engulfed in this. Now, this could indicate that two things. This could either indicate we're going to see some range bound action here, where we just see price sort of mess around in this area within this zone of the previous daily range, where we see possibly just some slower consolidation today. Or alternatively, it could also mean that we start to see a break to the downside. Now, what we could then see if this is the case is if we do see this level start to break down, this would align with that idea of us seeing that 5-wave move. Now, the key thing is here is if we continue to find resistance between this 29,866 and this 29,995, possibly what we could see is price could look to visit this S1 line here at this 29,446. Other targets to the downside for today are this 29,085. We have 28,603 and this 28,236. So keeping an eye on these. If we do see price start to fall off here, possibly we could see a move down into some of those levels. Now, if we are looking at this and we get back above these lines, what we could potentially see is price could look to move up towards this 30,289, which is still aligned with this idea of being a corrective move here. If we break these highs though, then we do have targets to the upside of this 30,775, 31,134 and this level here of this 31,619 as possible targets to the upside. So that would align with getting some kind of a breakout here where this becomes a bigger 5-wave move. So going to be keeping an eye on this throughout the day. Now, just moving on to the weekly pivots, what we are looking at here is we still have this target open at the downside here, which is this S1 at this 29,485. We haven't touched this yet. If we do see price come back down here one more time, we'll be interested to see how we react on this level. If we do see a reaction, what I would be looking out for is a possibility to come back up and retest these higher lines. You have this 30,432 to this 30,855, in which case we could look to find resistance at these points again. If, however, we do look to break down deeper here, we have the S2 sitting at this 28,735 and the lower line here of this 27,560 as possible support zones below us. Now, if we do look for a move back to the upside, going to be watching out for these central lines here. If we do continue up here just in 3 waves, this could align with the idea of getting continuation to the downside. Alternatively, if we do look to hold these and get back above this, possible targets for this week are still this 31,387. We have this area here of this 32,545 and this higher zone here of this 32,298 as potential targets for this week. Now, looking down below us on the monthly, what we can see is that we're still holding this level of this top line here. Now, if we do continue to hold this, this could still align with the idea of us seeing that potential for a move to the upside here, where our target would be the 32,989. Now, we'd have to obviously start to see good impulsive structure. The only way that would really align with our counts is we'd have to then say that this move is completed here, and then we're looking for a break to the upside. Failure to hold this line here could potentially mean we see a move down towards 28,897 or this 28,113 as possible downside targets, where we are looking to find support higher up here. Another area of interest to me would be this S1 line here towards this 26,379. This would align more with the idea that we start to see a bigger breakdown in a 5-wave move. So going to be keeping an eye on those targets over the rest of this month. Okay, so we're going to leave the video there. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please smash the like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, turn on those bell notifications so you never miss a video, and leave us some feedback down below. Also in the description, you'll find links to Discord. Come check it out. It's free to join. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.